Some stories feel like they were meant to be shared with the world. Stories that begin in darkness, but end in light. Today, we'll take you through the journey of a fragile little kitten named Stoot, a stray covered in oil, fighting for his life, until one act of compassion changed everything. This is not just a rescue story, it's a reminder of how powerful love and kindness can be. The discovery. In Milwaukee, Animal Control received a call about a kitten in distress. At first, rescuers assumed it would be a routine case, another stray needing food, warmth, and shelter. But when they arrived, the scene was far more heartbreaking than expected. Huddled in a damp corner, his fur slick and heavy with black oil, was a fragile kitten later named Stoot. His tiny body trembled from hunger, exhaustion, and cold. His eyes, wide yet clouded with fatigue, seemed to carry the weight of surrender, as though part of him had already begun to give up. For stray animals, survival is always uncertain. They face hunger, disease, and harsh weather. But oil contamination is especially cruel. It clings stubbornly to fur, blocks the skin from breathing, and seeps into the body, causing poisoning and weakness. Worse still, it strips animals of their ability to regulate temperature, leaving them vulnerable to hypothermia. For a kitten as small and undernourished as Stoot, the chances of survival were dangerously slim. Yet even in that dire state, the rescuers refused to let him fade away. They knew that every heartbeat mattered. With gentle hands and unwavering determination, they lifted the frail kitten from the shadows, silently vowing to fight for him when he could no longer fight for himself. In that moment, one simple but powerful decision was made. This life, no matter how fragile, was worth saving. Stoot's story would not end in despair, but in the possibility of hope. Enter Emily, the rescuer. That's when Emily Rakoven, director of Thrifted Kittens Animal Rescue, stepped in. Emily was no stranger to desperate cases. Over the years, she had fostered and rehabilitated hundreds of fragile kittens, many arriving on the brink of death. But something about Stoot struck her differently. His eyes, dulled by exhaustion yet pleading for relief, seemed to speak louder than words. Later, she would describe his expression as nothing less than a cry for help. With the gentleness of someone who had walked this road many times before, Emily lifted Stoot and wrapped him in a soft towel. The fabric cocooned his trembling frame, offering a small measure of warmth and safety he hadn't felt in a long time. Then, the painstaking work began. Emily carefully dabbed and wiped away the oil clinging to his fur. Each stroke revealed tiny patches of downy gray beneath the grime, as though she were slowly uncovering the kitten he was always meant to be. It was clear, however, that cleaning alone would not save him. His breathing was shallow, his body fragile, and every movement seemed to drain what little strength he had left. Emily knew that Stoot's recovery would require more than food, water, or even medicine. What he truly needed was something harder to provide, a reason to hold on. She whispered softly to him as she worked, letting him hear a steady voice of reassurance. For the first time in his short, painful life, Stoot was no longer alone. The first days of recovery. The first 48 hours were the hardest. Stoot was placed under constant care, warmed blankets, syringe feedings, and careful observation for signs of internal damage. His little paws trembled as he tried to stand. At times, Emily worried he might not make it through the night. But then came a small miracle. On the second morning, after another careful bath, Stoot let out a faint but determined meow. It wasn't just a sound, it was a declaration. He wanted to live. That moment lit a fire in Emily and her rescue team. They redoubled their efforts, determined to give him every chance going viral. Emily began documenting Stoot's recovery on TikTok, originally intending the short clips as simple updates for fellow fosters and rescue supporters. She filmed his slow progress, from his first hesitant steps to the moments when he finally accepted food with a bit of eagerness. At first, the posts reached only the small community who already followed Thrifted Kitten's animal rescue. But within days, something extraordinary happened. One particular video, showing Stoot cautiously exploring his surroundings after finishing a meal, struck a chord far beyond Milwaukee. It spread rapidly, shared thousands of times until it reached audiences across the globe. Almost overnight, Stoot became more than just another foster kitten in Emily's care. He became a symbol of resilience, of hope, of the power of compassion. His journey was suddenly being watched by more than 11 million people worldwide. The comment sections overflowed with encouragement. "You saved him. This gives me hope. Stoot is a warrior." Viewers who had never met him felt invested in his fight for life, celebrating each milestone as though it were their own. What started as a private act of rescue transformed into a collective story of survival. Strangers began donating supplies, offering to help other local rescues, and sharing their own tales of animals who had defied the odds. In a world often heavy with bad news, Stoot's fragile persistence reminded people of something simple yet profound. Even the smallest life can inspire millions to care, to hope, and to believe in second chances, transformation, and playfulness. As the weeks passed, Stoot transformed. His once oily fur grew soft and clean, his eyes sparkled with curiosity, and his energy returned in full. He began batting at toys, climbing onto blankets, and even chasing Emily's cat, Blue Moon, around the house. Every milestone, his first purr, his first real meal, his first playful jump, was celebrated by millions who had followed from the beginning. What started as a story of despair had blossomed into one of joy, and people couldn't get enough of watching Stoot's personality shine. The forever home. 6 weeks later, Emily received the call she had been waiting for. A loving couple wanted to adopt Stoot. This wasn't a casual decision. They had followed his journey from the very first video, watching him fight through weakness, slowly regain his strength, and finally take his first playful steps. Along the way, they had fallen in love not only with his soft gray fur and wide eyes, but with the resilience and courage he embodied. They weren't looking for just any cat. They wanted him, the kitten who had already touched their hearts. The day of adoption was filled with emotion. Emily gently placed Stoot in their arms, tears welling in her eyes. For weeks, she had been his lifeline, nursing him when the odds were against him, and now it was time to let him go. Though it was difficult to say goodbye, she knew this was the happy ending he had fought for, a true forever home. Stoot adapted quickly, bonding with his new family almost instantly. And in a heartwarming twist, he remained best friends with Blue Moon, visiting often. His story had come full circle, from despair to hope, from survival to love. Stoot's legacy. Today, Stoot's story continues to inspire. His journey raised awareness for thousands of animals in shelters who are still waiting for their chance. Emily often reminds her followers, behind every viral story is a bigger truth, that kindness saves lives. Stoot was just one kitten, but because of him, countless others may now find homes, hope, and love. And that's what makes his story so much more than a rescue. It makes it a movement,